It's still an ongoing process, but it is quite remarkable how quickly many attitudes in Europe seem to have evolved in the last few weeks, and particularly in the few days since the invasion, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began. So one example would be in Scandinavia and the Nordics. We now see a majority of people in Finland expressing support for entering NATO for the first time ever. This is a country with a strong tradition of neutrality. We've also seen an apparent consensus in Germany emerge around a number of issues related to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, including the government's plan to rearm Germany extensively, enlarge its budget, and of course the attempt to crack down on Russian business involvement in Germany, as well as support for a range of economic sanctions against Russia.
Matthew, it seemed in the lead up to this conflict that Germany was perhaps the weakest link when it came to European in Western country, obviously because of its various other ties with Russia. Now Germany seems to be fairly on board with the rest of the continent in terms of its stance against Russia. This is also a significant change as well.
Yes, it really is. It has seemed that Germany has been reluctant to burn its boats with the Russian government, and since the full-scale invasion was launched, that seems to have changed. And I think we still need to see some analysis by people with inside knowledge of the views of high-level German officials. But certainly from their behavior, it seems as though they have carried out a very extensive reassessment of their relationship with Germany, including in the realm of energy. So the government has announced that it intends to reassess Germany's energy needs and is going to attempt to diversify away from reliance on Russian gas. All this suggests that Germany, that not only the German government, but the opposition and wide swaths of the German elite now do not see Russia as a reliable partner.
Since we're talking about reassessment, Matthew, I want to ask you about what you think how Putin's standing is looking like, at least domestically. I mean, it is a country where it is difficult to express much opposition views. How is what's been happening in the last 5-6 days going to affect the sentiment within the country?
Well, as you said, it is difficult to measure public opinion in Russia for the reason you mentioned. Before the war broke out in its current, more extreme form, there were some opinion polls that suggested fairly substantial support for the Russian government's tough line against Ukraine. But on the other hand, there are also some indications that that support might be softer or might be highly conditional. So first of all, we've seen fairly large protests in a number of Russian cities, I think possibly larger than the Russian government was expecting. These have led to arrests. We've also seen an interesting kind of game being played by the Russian state-controlled media, in which they have been quite reluctant to discuss the exact nature of the war in Ukraine, what Russian troops are doing. They still have not disclosed any details about casualty levels. And one reading of that is that their whole strategy was tied to a sort of a blitzkrieg success in Ukraine, so a kind of lightning war in which Ukraine would be defeated in a matter of days, and there would not be time for public support for the conflict to erode. That has not happened, and therefore they're presented with a new problem, which is how to sell this war to a Russian public that was not given a lot of information about its goals or how it's going. In the same vein, there is also evidence of quite low morale among the Russian troops who have been sent to fight in Ukraine. Some of those who've been captured have said that they were not told what they were going to be doing there, or that they were going to be unwelcome, and they've been shocked by the level of hostility of the Ukrainian people toward them. So there is certainly a lot of room for the Russian government's policies to become more unpopular if they fail to yield their intended results of a Ukrainian capitulation immediately.
Since we're talking about shifting public opinion, I want to sort of go back to the European perspective. How do you think the continent's view or approach has changed towards refugees and migrants in the last week or so?
Well, there have been some moves to attempt to facilitate the arrival of Ukrainian migrants in European countries, and It does seem as though the beginnings of an organized sort of policy on them are emerging, including a number of steps to provide them with the basic necessities of life, as well as to allow them to remain while they need to. I do wonder whether the experiences of Russia with the Syrian, pardon me, of Europe with the Syrian refugee wave of a few years ago have borne fruit in the form of a sort of greater level of preparedness to mount a concerted effort in that direction.